without further ado, it's time to get into our first segment. The Georgia Swarm. First of all, I want to shout out producer Joe for this graphic. Let's see if we can find out who these guys are. We've got Brian Cole, Lyle Thompson's buzzing. Not sure who that one is. That should be Andrew Q. More on him later on the show. Oh, and then of course the Nectar. Producer Joe is always good at adding the extra effort here. The Nectar, of course, is the NLL trophy or NLL Cup, if you will. Shout out to PJ on the graphics. We appreciate him. That looks awesome. But the Georgia Swarm have made the playoffs for the first time since 2019. In 2017, they won it all. And for Georgia sports, believe me, that's something significant. But now, as the fan numbers have dropped, I've been reporting them for weeks now. Georgia Swarm has not had the greatest fan numbers in the last few weeks. I don't know if fans aren't buying out. I don't know if it's more accurate reporting of the numbers. The fact is, the Swarm are kind of, hopefully the playoffs gets them more support, which I'm sure it definitely will. That stadium in Duluth, Georgia. As for this team, when it comes to winning and when it comes to who's been contributing this year, Lyle Thompson, of course, has 81 points. Shane Jackson, former league MVP, also has 81 points in another great year for him. Andrew Q, who's been captain clutch with 4 game-winning goals this season, is quite the standout. Of course, Seth Oakes with 55 points. Brandon Bomberry with 47 points. The list goes on at how amazing the Swarm have been this year. But as always, as Brett Fruit said in his conversation with Ashley Docking, we are going to find out how much goaltending really matters in the final part of this season. One player that does not make the graphic here is Brett Dobson. Shame on you, producer Joe, for not showing the goalie. Shame on you. But honestly here, folks, Brett Dobson is the bread and butter of the Georgia Swarm team. He's got a 77.8 save percentage this season. And of course, this is just his second year playing lacrosse. Last year at a 77.9. Has there been a drop-off? Well, I wouldn't say that. But it seems like Brett Dobson, in the beginning part of the season at least, was not as dominant, if you will. In fact, as the weeks have gone on, I feel like the Swarm have actually gotten better defensively. But I will say this team will go as far as Lyle and Brett Dobson takes them. And I know what people are going to say. Well, Michael, it's the best offensive player possibly, maybe even in the league, even though I argue that. It's one of the best goalies, of course. They go as far as that takes them. But really, Lyle Thompson, I'm telling you folks, does this Jeff Teat thing where he'll just be shut down for some games, or he'll get a bunch of assists to pad the stats a little bit. And I'm like, I wonder if teams gear so much on him, can Shane Jackson, can the other guys step up? And so far this year, the answer has been yes. Listen, Andrew Q with 4 game-winning goals, and producer Joe has made the comment of saying, what the crap does that stat even mean sometimes? It's like, how do you count? Like, what person is judging momentum of that shot that makes it game-winning? Because it's not just a tiebreaker. It's always like, what are we talking about here? But Andrew Q's been clutch regardless. He's been having timely goals, if you want to use another adjective there. It just seems like this team will go as far as the goaltending in their number 1 star player takes them. There was a play again for the Georgia Swarm this past weekend against Las Vegas where Lyle Thompson, the broadcaster, mentioned that he basically turned a 3-on-2 into he basically turned like a 5-on-2 into like a 1-on-1 because like he got past the defense in transition, and it was like you couldn't believe what had happened. He didn't score the goal, but the guy is a Superman, and he makes moves to the net. But again, how will Brett Dobson fare in the playoffs? When Brett Dobson's hot, this dude is locked in for good. Just come off a PLL championship. Maybe some of the fatigue is finally worn off because he's actually being amazing the last few weeks. I feel like Georgia was a little bit too close to comfort too close for comfort with the Las Vegas Underdogs, but I do feel like that they kept them at arm's length the entire game, even though it was tied in the third quarter. I hope, for Georgia's purposes, that this team can keep it up. Because I know people have argued in the past that, hey, this Swarm team, do they have enough fan support? Which I think they absolutely do. I went to the one game I went to, they had fan support. I think people are very insane if they think the Swarm should relocate. There should be more Southern teams, including a Florida team. And I think if the Swarm win, it only helps that fact even more. I'm sure with the New York Riptide, it certainly helped their relocation whenever they are the ones who were stinking for the last few years. I don't know how much of a percentage of the pie that takes, but I do think that if they were like on a heater for the last 3 years, I don't know if the ownership would have been as sold on Ottawa as they are now. Just an observation, just analysis from me. But again, the Georgia Swarm, the more you win, the better things are for your team and for the fans and everything. Ask the Philadelphia Wings how they feel right now about their situation. Just don't read the social media comments. Paul Day would not be happy. I think the Swarm ceiling, ultimately, I think they can make the semifinals. I don't think that, could they push a Bandits or a Rock or a Seals or a Firewolves to 3 games? Maybe. But it's tough. I think Swarm's ceiling is pushing a game 3 in the semifinals. I don't think their ceiling is making the finals, even though I do love the graphic here from producer Joe. I would say a semifinals game 3 is their ceiling, and to see what happens from there. But I don't see this team winning the championship. They have the roster on paper to do so. I just don't see it happening.